Guffey Proctor here. It's been a while, and I am 100% all in on the political discussion about voting. We're doing it fucking wrong, and I absolutely abhor what has happened in this country in the last several primaries. It's unnecessary. So many of us have smartphones. I literally accessed all of my Social Security, SSA, SSI, so on and so forth, Social Security survivors, all of that stuff I did over the internet. Everything we do is over the internet. Everything we do is verified from our phones and from these secure facets. Mailing things in is so much more reliable than going in person. And the reason why I say that is because first, we shouldn't be mailing anything in. We're at the point where we should be voting on our fucking phones. I can log into idme.gov or whatever it is, that these new identification, and just like your credit, you have to go through, there's certain quality qualifiers and checks and balances in order to get a credit card. The same thing happens with Social Security. Voting is no different. Like, there's no reason, and if you really think about it, it could be more secure because it is linked to our personal cell phones, our personal IP addresses, our address. I think it would be easier to detect fraud. And we've seen that through mail-in voting. And there were Republicans, that were voting in, Florida and another state accidentally. It wasn't anything malicious. They just fucking mistake. Shit happens. I don't think anyone is trying to... Do you know how hard it is to get a vote and how little that vote matters at an individual basis when you're talking about illegal immigrants or somebody fudging? It's just not feasible or realistic. What is realistic, much more realistic, is that every single one of us have a political bias, and it's apparent online in our social media accounts. Now, if anybody's watched the Big Hack or the Great Hack or whatever it is, a lot of us got a political spin, swung from one side to the other if we were independent, pushed into one direction or another by media. Now, I'm not saying that, every single one of us are, lemmings and we're getting pulled around, but I will concede that social media is a strong thing. And if you are the type of person that you can just put your social media down and not touch it, and you have super self-control, then great. But a lot of people don't. And what's happening is votes are being moved that way, not by busing illegal immigrants into New Hampshire from Massachusetts. Trump said that happened. It's such bullshit. Never fucking happened. Most of what he says isn't really accurate anyway. He just constantly comes up with shit, and it's just like, where do you come up with this stuff? I'll call it as I sees it when he does something good, right? The hemp legislation, wants to keep going with that. Cannabis, like he said he was going to do. He made a lot of promises on the campaign trail. He's just not following through. But that's not what we're talking about. I don't like him. I don't like Biden. I don't like either of them. I think it's shit. And I think the reason why mail-in voting has been a problem for so long is because the two-party system wants nothing of it, right? They don't want more voters. They don't want more people in voting booths. They want less. Trump supporters, Biden supporters, it doesn't matter. More people with their opinions and their decisions means more decision-making for the people. And that's not in their best interest of their profits. And I think we all know this, right? We're living in the two-party system that is completely built around winner take all, and it doesn't work for anybody. I just watched an episode of Patriot Act the other day, yesterday, the day before, and that was the exact episode. The same subject matter of this. Matter of fact, it's funny now that I think about it. And his discussion was the same thing. Winner take all elections don't do anything. And places like Maine creating a awesome voting system where you've got ranked choice voting. You can choose what you like first, and then so on and so forth. And ultimately, you're not throwing away your vote. And that's what we need to get to. That's where we need to go. But we also need to be voting from our phones. It increases the accuracy. There is literally a way to ensure that when you go to vote, that simultaneously, when you press that voting button or whatever on your phone, it's discharging a camera shot to your face. And it's increasing the accuracy that you are you. Now, of course, these things can be flawed, but so can the current voting system. Voting machines are not secure, and most of us have paper ballots in New Hampshire. That is fine. I think paper ballots are great in a lot of ways, but digital ballots can be hacked, and I get that. But doing things from our phones, I think, is no less, if anything, it's more safe than most of the election machines that are out there. They are tamper evident. You see 11-year-olds hacking election machines. I think it's very unlikely that they're going to hack the constantly updated Apple and iOS software, right? Like, Apple's constantly updating their software, and every single time they change the code, you've got to update the code. You've got to update your viruses or software, malware, whatever it is. Coming from a layman's perspective, I'm not, computer science nerd or anything. I know very little about it. But I do know that when things are difficult, it doesn't make it a viable or scalable option. So voting fraud needs to be easy, and for a lot of people to do it. A lot of dead people, a lot of immigrants, and it's just not possible. Voting from your phones, this and that, still, they would have to infiltrate major systems, and it just wouldn't be worth it. The same reason there's not a lot of viruses and malware written for iPhones, because it's constantly updated, because it doesn't make sense for them to do it from a viable standpoint. They can just go to PC and Android. As time goes on, we're going to start seeing more and more of this demand for voting from home, and not necessarily paper ballots either. We all have smartphones. We all have access to a secured device. Most of these require multiple login, verification methods. And I don't think that, it's perfect, but I certainly think it's better than most of these election machines in a lot of these different cities and states. And I think that the accuracy is definitely going to be more, consistent. I think that, you're going to have a lot of people updating an app right before it releases, so nobody understands how it operates. When you want to go vote, you have to update the app, so it's updated immediately before, meaning there's no room for them to get in and do anything to change it. They have to really be, somebody within the deep state. But I think what I'm getting at is there's just a lot of ways that they could figure this out. We're living in 2020 when, there's terabyte hard drives the size of credit cards and just crazy shit. We're flying people on commercial space travel, rockets now. Like, this needs to change, and we need to adapt. You want to make America great? We need to make it better, and not again. We don't need to be going back in fucking time. And, using chisels and stone. We need to be moving forward and continue to expand the ability to vote for everyone. I know that's not beneficial to every political party. And yeah, I'm shitting on the Republicans with this because they do not like an expansion of voting. And I do think that they try to hedge voting. At the same time, I think that Democrats are not pushing hard enough for things like ranked choice voting because it doesn't benefit them either. I think we're looking at two sides of the same coin, the same duopoly, the same two-party system. And their concern isn't to make your life better. So when you vote, right, vote with other people. Take other people with you. Do everything you can to expand the amount of people voting. And whether they're voting for Trump or they're voting for Biden or they're voting for Jorgensen or they're voting for fucking Yang or The Rock or fucking an episode of Hawaii fucking Five-0. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that they're voting. Don't boo, vote, right? Obama got a lot of shit for that, but he shouldn't have because he was right. Voting is still something that we can use, and it's not completely corrupted yet. Sure, it's corrupted in some areas, like a lot of the holes in my wall here that I'm, fixing slowly. There's a lot of things that, can be fixed. It just takes time. And I think now we're in an election where it's been very apparent of how broken our system is and how rigged it is for both parties. For Joe Biden, he was basically crowned and anointed the Democratic frontrunner. When we had real good candidates that wanted to make changes, whether you are a Democrat or a Libertarian, I think that Yang and Tulsi were phenomenal candidates. You couldn't have gotten better candidates to just destroy Biden. And yeah, I think that it's a broken system. I think that the more people vote, the more people that can vote, we're going to see a lot more third party. That's what I think. I think that you're going to see a split. You'll have Tea Party and then conservatives and libertarians and Democrats and liberal progressives, Green Party. I think that that's what we need in this country. And people are afraid of that because then you're talking about, instead of majority rule, a plurality rule. And, like a third party candidate, a fourth party candidate could win with 27%, which is scary to some people. People don't like the idea of that. But I think people like this a lot less. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Ask yourself, what can you do already on your phone, right? Taxes, renewing your license, real IDs, passports, the list goes on. And disability is another thing. Like, you can apply for and appeal. I went through the entire process, never going into a Social Security office and seeing anybody in person. I literally, Social Security, every step of the way, it was a lot of paperwork and it would have been easier to go in, but there's reasons why I didn't, obviously, COVID-19, so on and so forth. I had to do a hearing over the phone. We can do this in 2020, but it's not going to be until next election at earliest. Get in. Vote in your local elections. So much more important that you vote in your local elections, because that's when you can choose to have at-home voting. I mean, there's just so much power in local elections because you decide how your town votes, how your state votes, how your city votes, so on and so forth. You can work a lot of local magic for elections, and that impacts the elections as a whole. If more states did ranked choice voting, we would have less candidates like Joe Biden and Donald Trump. At the end of the day, I think that's what most people want. Republicans really most of them are not a fan of Donald Trump, except for the people who are. And a lot of them are new, just like Bernie Sanders supporters are new to the Democratic Party. There's a lot of change happening, and there's new evolved versions of the old parties. But we need to get out of this left-right dichotomy. It's a mess. It doesn't work anymore. Thank you guys so much for your time. As always, if you can, subscribe, spread the word. I am going to definitely have some newer and better quality content coming up and moving forward. I think you guys will be excited to see stuff kind of blossom as we go forward. It's just a matter of getting those resources halfway through next month and starting to really put a lot of time and effort into the editing and production quality. That's my goal, at least. So we'll see. Thank you for sticking around and staying tuned.